What happens when the heartbeat of one of rock's biggest bands suddenly goes silent? The news hit like a thunderclap. Sam Rivers, the legendary bassist and founding member of Limp Bizkit, has passed away at just 48 years old. Fans around the world are still in shock, struggling to process the loss of the man whose bass lines helped define an entire era of late 90s rock. From festival stages packed with thousands of screaming fans to the quiet, creative corners of his Jacksonville beginnings, Sam's presence was unforgettable, not just for his sound, but for the spirit he brought into every room. Almost instantly, tributes began flooding in from across the music world. Bandmates, friends, and fans all shared memories of the humble genius who gave Limp Bizkit its pulse. But one tribute stood out among them all, a deeply emotional message from frontman Fred Durst, who called Sam more than just a bandmate. He called him family. Durst's words weren't just a farewell, they were a window into decades of brotherhood, creativity, and shared struggle.
Sam Rivers, the legend, truly such a gifted, unbelievably sweet and wonderful person. And
in his heartfelt remembrance, Fred opened up about how they met, the spark that started Limp Bizkit, and how Sam's music and kindness shaped everything that came after. But before that touching tribute, let's take a step back to the moment when a young Fred Durst first walked into a small Florida bar and heard a bass line that would change music history forever. It all started in Jacksonville, Florida, long before Limp Bizkit became a global name. Fred Durst was just a determined young artist, chasing a sound he could hear in his head but couldn't yet bring to life. He had an idea for a new kind of band, something raw, heavy, and unpredictable, but he couldn't find the right people to make it real. Then one night, inside a small bar called Pier 7 near Jacksonville Beach, everything changed. As Fred watched a local band perform, his attention locked on one person, a young bassist named Sam Rivers.
you know, how I met Sam was I'd put a couple iterations of an idea of a band I was, trying to make happen in Jacksonville, Florida.
The way Sam played his 5-string bass was unlike anything Fred had ever seen. Every note was clean, powerful, and full of emotion. In that moment, Fred realized he had just found the missing piece to his vision. After the show, he walked straight up to Sam, told him about the idea he had for this new project, and asked if he'd be interested. Sam didn't hesitate for a second. He just smiled and said, "Killer, I'm in, let's do it." That short exchange would go on to change both of their lives forever. From that point, the two began spending hours jamming together, experimenting and shaping what would eventually become Limp Bizkit's signature sound.
There Sam was on the stage with his band, killing it on the bass, and I went, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. And in my mind, it was you had to start with the rhythm section, the bass and the drum.
A chaotic blend of hip-hop attitude, grunge emotion, and raw, aggressive energy. Sam's cousin, John Otto, soon joined them on drums, bringing a rhythmic complexity that glued everything together. Fred often joked that his guitar skills were limited, but Sam's talent filled in every gap, making even Fred's roughest ideas sound bigger than life. It was in those early garage sessions that the chemistry between Fred, Sam, and John first came alive. 3 young musicians with completely different influences, somehow creating a sound that no one else had.
Everything disappeared besides his gift. And I went up to Sam after the show and I said, hey man, you're unbelievable. I got this idea for this band I want to do, and kind of threw it out there and told him what I wanted it to be. And he looked at me and he says, "Killer, I'm in, let's do it." I was like, oh my God, well, let's do it. And that's kind of how things started to come together. I had a bass player, and after me and Sam been jamming around and messing around for a bit, I started looking around for other players and things, and Sam said, well, my cousin John's a killer drummer. He's a jazz drummer. He should jam with us. And I said, well, jazz would be great because it'll give us that kind of beat we want, that kind of, that swag. And so I met I met John through Sam, and saw that John had the thing. He had it.
What started as a small-town jam session was quietly turning into something legendary, and before long, the world would hear it. Within just a few years, that small Florida garage project exploded into one of the most talked-about bands in the world. Limp Bizkit stormed through the late 90s with a sound that didn't fit into any single category. It was aggressive yet catchy, heavy but strangely melodic, and right at the core of that chaos was Sam Rivers, whose bass lines became the heartbeat of every song. When albums like Significant Other and Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water hit the charts, Limp Bizkit wasn't just making music. They were redefining what rock could sound like in a new generation. Fred Durst may have been the face of the band, but Sam's playing was the glue that held it all together. His bass wasn't just rhythm, it was emotion, tension, and release all rolled into one. Behind the fame, Sam was known as the calmest presence in a band that thrived on chaos. While others fed off controversy and wild energy, Sam stayed focused on the craft. His love for grunge and alternative rock shaped the group's emotional edge. Influences from bands like Alice in Chains, Mother Love Bone, and Stone Temple Pilots gave Limp Bizkit's sound a darker soul beneath its aggressive surface. Every performance felt personal for him. Whether he was in front of tens of thousands of people or just rehearsing in a room, Sam played like it was his last show on Earth. Fans could feel that. The sincerity in every note, the fire behind every riff. As the fame grew and the spotlight burned brighter, the bond between Fred and Sam only deepened. They weren't just bandmates chasing success. They were brothers chasing a dream they built together from nothing. But as is often the case in rock history, success came with its own shadows. The non-stop touring, the pressure, the expectations, it all started to take a toll. And soon, the very man who gave the band its pulse would find himself fighting a battle far away from the stage. As Limp Bizkit dominated global stages and sold millions of records, few people knew that behind Sam Rivers' calm smile and electrifying stage presence, he was fighting a silent battle. Years of relentless touring, sleepless nights, and the lifestyle that came with fame began to wear him down. By 2015, Sam's health took a devastating turn. He was diagnosed with severe liver disease, a result of heavy drinking during the band's wildest years. Doctors warned him that without serious change, he might not make it. The man whose bass lines fueled an entire generation suddenly had to step away from the stage that defined his life. When Sam announced he'd be leaving Limp Bizkit to focus on his health, fans were heartbroken but understanding. Fred Durst and the rest of the band stood by him completely. They knew this wasn't about fame anymore. It was about survival. Sam kept a low profile during those years, undergoing treatment and trying to rebuild his life away from the spotlight. For someone who had spent decades living through sound and rhythm, the silence was heavy. But even during his darkest moments, those close to him said he never lost his spirit or his sense of humor. Years later, against all odds, Sam made an incredible comeback. After receiving a liver transplant, he slowly found his way back to music. When he rejoined Limp Bizkit in 2018, fans erupted with joy. Seeing him back on stage, alive, smiling, and doing what he loved was emotional, not just for the audience, but for Fred and the entire band. It felt like a full circle moment, a second chance for a man who had already given everything to his art. But as Fred would later reveal in his emotional tribute, no one could have predicted how short that second act would be. When the news of Sam Rivers' passing broke, Fred Durst was one of the first to speak publicly. But his words weren't rehearsed or polished. They came straight from the heart. In an emotional video message, Fred recounted the very beginning of their story, describing the moment he first saw Sam performing in that small Florida bar. He remembered how blown away he was by Sam's effortless command of the bass, and how that instant connection sparked the creation of Limp Bizkit. Fred's voice cracked as he recalled walking up to Sam after the show and hearing him say the words that started it all: "Killer, I'm in, let's do it." From that night on, Fred said, Sam became not just his bandmate, but his brother, the foundation on which the entire band was built. As he spoke, Fred's grief was palpable. He described Sam as a legend, truly such a gifted, unbelievably sweet and genuine person. What stood out most was how Fred painted a picture of Sam beyond the stage, a quiet, kind soul who poured emotion into every note he played. He spoke of their early jam sessions, how Sam could take any rough idea Fred threw out and turn it into something 1,000 times better. There was awe in his voice when he said that Sam could pull a beautiful sadness out of the bass, a sound that gave Limp Bizkit its emotional depth. Fred admitted through tears that he'd gone through gallons and gallons of tears since the news broke, reflecting on their wild journey together. The world tours, the chaos, the triumphs, and the quiet moments in between. He reminisced about seeing Sam happy again during the band's recent resurgence, performing with the same fire that once filled packed arenas at their peak. Fred said he knew Sam was proud, that wherever he was smiling, knowing he did it. He lived it, Fred said softly. He made it happen, and what he left behind is priceless. It wasn't just a eulogy, it was a love letter to a lifelong friend, a reminder of the bond they built from the very beginning. In those few minutes, Fred didn't speak as a rock star. He spoke as a brother, saying goodbye. The shock of Sam Rivers' passing rippled far beyond Limp Bizkit's fan base. Within hours, social media was flooded with messages from musicians, producers, and fans around the world, all paying tribute to the man they called the backbone of the band. Fellow artists described Sam as a quiet force, someone whose presence could fill a room without ever needing to speak. His influence stretched across generations of rock and nu metal musicians who grew up trying to emulate that deep, smooth bass tone that only he could create. Fans shared memories of concerts where Sam's energy was contagious, where the ground literally seemed to shake beneath his sound. Even people who didn't follow Limp Bizkit closely could recognize the impact of his rhythm, a sound that helped define late 90s rock culture. Fred Durst and the rest of the band posted a heartfelt statement calling Sam a once-in-a-lifetime kind of human, a true legend of legends. It wasn't corporate or polished, just raw emotion. Behind the scenes, people close to the group said the band has been completely shattered by the loss. They were gearing up for another tour, and Fred had reportedly been working on new material with Sam before his passing. Now, that future feels uncertain. The shows may still go on, but without Sam, it will never be the same. His absence isn't just musical, it's emotional. He was the balance in the band, the steady heartbeat behind the chaos. And yet, despite the sadness, there's also a deep sense of gratitude. Fans and peers alike are celebrating Sam's legacy, revisiting his performances, replaying the bass lines that shaped a generation, and remembering the humility of a man who never sought fame, only the music. His passing leaves a void, but his sound continues to echo everywhere, from packed stadiums to the headphones of those who grew up with his songs. In the end, Sam Rivers didn't just play the bass, he was the bass, the pulse, the groove, the soul of Limp Bizkit. And even though he's gone, that rhythm he created will live on forever. Sam Rivers wasn't just a musician, he was the heartbeat of Limp Bizkit, the quiet soul behind the band's loudest moments. From the night Fred Durst met him in that small Florida bar to the arenas they conquered together, his journey was one of raw talent, resilience, and brotherhood. Fred's emotional tribute reminded the world that behind every riff and rhythm was a man who gave everything to his art, even when life hit hard. Now, as fans replay his performances and share memories online, Sam's spirit lives on in every note he ever played. His legacy isn't just about fame or success, it's about passion, connection, and the power of music to outlive us all. Because even though Sam Rivers has taken his final bow, his sound will never fade. It will keep echoing in the songs, in the fans, and in every heart that ever felt his music. If Sam Rivers' music ever meant something to you, whether it was a song that got you through a rough day, a concert you'll never forget, or just that one bass line that made you feel alive, share it in the comments below. Let's fill this space with love, stories, and memories that remind the world who Sam really was. And if you want to keep his legacy alive, hit that like button, share this video with another Limp Bizkit fan, and keep his sound playing loud. Because legends like Sam Rivers don't fade, their rhythm lives forever.